I'm Stephen Hand from Archery Supplies, and today we're going to look at Skylon Radius Arrows. Now, a few weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, I get this message in the morning, and it says, Stephen, have you checked out these Skylon Arrows? And I was like, Skylon? What is that? I've got no idea. Never heard of it. What is it? And anyway, this guy says, look, I like the Victory VAP arrows that you use. He said, I've shot them for ages, but you've got to check out these Skylon arrows. He said, I'll send you some to test. Now, he wasn't a shop. He wasn't from Skylon. He was a shooter. And his email went on to say, look, he's shooting really well with them. And I think he was rated third in Europe somewhere. So basically I got in and I started looking at these Skylons. I then started looking at reviews, and basically I eventually got pricing for them, and this is the Skylon Radius Arrows. Now, Skylon itself has got a whole bunch of carbon arrows in the lineup, and they're pretty well priced. And when I say a whole lineup, they go from the very small size, and the very small I mean thinner than X10 arrows, which are this very, very thin carbon arrows. Then they go up to the 4.2. Now that 4.2, which is the radius size, that's equivalent to your Easton Carbon One, your Victory VAPs, your gold tip Pierce. So 4.2 is that size. 3.2 is obviously the thinner one, which is equivalent to your X10 and your Carbon Express Nano, the really thin one. Then you go up to the 5.2, which is equivalent to your Victory RIP or your gold tip kinetic shaft, and then you go up to your 6.4, I think, which is your standard carbon. So Skylon then have the indoor arrows, the thicker ones, and they've got the hunting traditional ones, and they've got a whole bunch of arrows. So to start off with, it was really confusing because I really didn't know what all these names meant. I really didn't know much about them. And then it so happens, this young lady that I sponsor, who's the Australian Ladies Champion, she's 16 years old, they get in contact with me and say they've been using these arrows for a year and I didn't know about it, and she's won the Australian titles with these arrows. Not these ones, but from Skylon. And I was like, so they shoot well? And like, dumb question because she won the Australian Nationals, right? And she's shooting all these records. So I go, well, okay. How do these arrows price in the market was the next question. So then I started to go through and price them up, and that's where I'm going to with these arrows. So the Radius Arrow is their beginner thin carbon arrow. So it's priced at under $100. Now, you're going to say, well, how does that sort of sit in the market? What is it? Now, these are fully made up arrows. They come with pins, pin nocks, and target points, and fletching. They come in a nice cardboard box like this. You can't see the thing. They've got instructions on the back, just there. They come in all the different spines, and I'm going to get this wrong, but they come in 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000, maybe right down to 1,800. 1,800 being the very soft ones for very light poundage bows. Now, at a 4.2, that being a thin carbon arrow, these are extremely well priced on the marketplace. These are a .005 straightness. They also have a .001 straightness arrow. But I'm just looking at these because these are aimed at the beginner market, and beginners for me in my store is the majority of my sales. It's new people coming in wanting a cheap compound bow or a cheap recurve and some cheap arrows. And in the past, you've kind of been stuck with like fiberglass arrows or cheap aluminium arrows or a very cheap over-spined carbon arrow. So this has really changed the whole market for target archers or recreational archers. These are not a hunting arrow. These are a target arrow. They come with target points. I'm going to show you what they look like in the box. So a bit about spine, like 300 being the stiffest. That's for about a 70-pound bow, 80-pound bow. I use 350s for 60 pounds, and I'm going to be using these at 400 spine for a 60-pound. So these are the pins at the back end. The idea of a pin is if you Robin Hood your arrow, so the arrow comes down the back end of it, this will protect the arrow from basically being destroyed. Pin nocks just push in, do not glue a pin nock on. That's the pin nock there. You've got these are Elite Plastiflets. They stick on really nice, and this is the graphics on the arrow. Target points, now depending on the spine which you go for, the target point will vary. These are a break-off point. They will vary in weight. So the arrows I'm choosing are 400s for this test, and they've got a 120 grain point, which is probably what you want. And you'll find they've got the right point for the right spined arrow, so you don't generally want a 120 grain point for a 20-pound bow. You want a lighter point, and Skylon have done that. So some people get, and the other thing this company comes with is a spine chart inside the package. So I'm going to display this. So this here gives you all your tech data about the arrows, which is really helpful. And on the back, it's got the spine chart to say which size arrow to get. So for me, I'm shooting a compound bow, which is between 301 and 340 feet per second. I'm shooting 55 to 60, so I'm on that line there. I'm at 28 inches, so that's an A9 group. So I go to the A9 group, just down there it says to shoot a 400 spine arrow. Now, that is dependent on point weight. If you went for a lighter point weight, then you go for a lighter spined arrow. If you go for a heavier point weight, you need to go for a stiffer spined arrow. But for me, you can see I'm in a 400 spine, which is about right. So these arrows are made with a 24-ton carbon. They are a nice looking carbon shaft. Now I don't know anything about these arrows. I just know they're really well priced in the market, and I'm very excited. I sound like I'm putting lots of hype about this, but for me, there is nothing worse than a person getting into archery and having the wrong arrows, because then they don't shoot well out of the bow. You can't tune them, and generally most of my customers come in and go, I've got $200, I need a bow and arrows. And it's like, how do I do this? Right, so this is the graphics. This is me gluing the point on. I've used impact glue. You can use hot melt. Now what you're going to notice is the knock here. This is a small groove knock. If you're shooting a compound, you're going to need a large knock. So this pin knock here unpulls, and you're going to fit a larger pin knock onto this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace all these pin knocks with boning pin knocks. There's a whole bunch of pin knocks on the market. I'm going to replace the boning pin knocks, and let's have a shot with them and let's see how well they shoot. Okay, so when you go to replace the pin knocks on the Skylon Arrows, the first thing you're going to notice is the pins are really tight on the bushings. So when I went to fit the boning pin knock, basically I had trouble getting them on. So all you got to do is either apply a little bit of liquid, so I just licked the pin knock, lick the pin, or apply some wax or some sort of lubricant, and that will basically allow you to insert your pin knock really easily. So the first thing is what I'm going to say is, when I enter into a new arrow, when I look at a new arrow, I don't know how it's going to shoot, and there's no exception with this. However, I've got two shooters who have already shot them today for me, and they've sent me some pictures of them shooting at 50 meters with them, and they said they shot great. So hopefully there's a couple of pictures of their groups at 50 meters on a nice little small target. So for the last 2 years I've been shooting Victory VAP arrows. Now VAPs are really good value, 4.2, and I'm going to say the best value 4.2 arrows on the market, and I've shot really well with them, and in 2 years I haven't broken any. So I shoot 140 grains at the front end with them, and I get really good groups. So I'm at 18 meters, so I'm just going to shoot a couple of these. Now what the two shooters who just brought these this morning, and the reason they brought them, they brought 4 dozen of these Skylon arrows, and I said, look, I wouldn't buy them, buy one and try them. What they wanted them for was for practice. They said, look, we just want arrows where we can go and shoot like 2 dozen arrows at an end into one target and just smash them up against each other and basically use them for practice, and then when it comes to competition we'll use a different arrow. So that's what they wanted, so they brought 2 dozen against my advice. And what they said to me, so these two archers test out a whole bunch of arrows, and when I say they test out, they actually buy. I don't give them stuff. So they were shooting VAPs and they went to the VXTs and they said, look, these arrows shoot better. And that was the reason why I went to the VXTs, because they did shoot better for me also. And everyone I sold, people said, look, I shoot better scores with them, so I went to the VXTs as well. Now I still use the VAPs that I'm shooting right now for practice, because they're cheaper and they're durable, and you know, and I've got so many of them. Now what one of my viewers says is, a lot of your videos are unprepared and you don't do enough research before you do them. And absolutely, I'm going in blind with this one too. So what I found with the Victory, with the VAPs, these are the elites, these are the .001s. I found they shot almost identical to the .005s. In fact, when I shoot competition, you will see that is the .005, and I also have the .001, and I've basically found very little difference. Now, I don't know if the Victory shot better because they were spine aligned, but I seem to shoot quite well with them. They're well priced, and I didn't break any, so they've been a successful arrow for me. So when people say to me, well, should I go to these arrows, or I got some comments about, oh, you know, an archery shop selling cheap Chinese arrows, what's the world coming to? It's coming to trying to make people shoot better and get people into the sport. And that's exactly what I told him. It's about getting people in the sport, and I said, if you coach people, you would understand the need for good quality arrows at an affordable price. Now, if you're an elite archer, as far as, you know, you're going to world championships or you're competing, you probably don't want to shoot the Skylon Radius Arrows. You probably want to shoot the Skylon Paragons or the Skylon Brixton, which are, you know, .001. Because if you're shooting competition, you don't want to be shooting under $100 a dozen arrows. But let's see how they shoot. Now, normally what you do is you shoot up close, because if these are not, let's say this spine's different, and these spines are 400 and they're 120 grain point. The VAPs I just shot are 140 grain point. These arrows are slightly shorter. I made them slightly shorter to stiffen the spine. So these arrows should weigh a little bit less. Now the other two archers who brought these arrows, they set them up the same as their I think the same as their VXTs, and they said they were 10 grains either heavier or lighter over the overall arrow, so they're basically identical. So let's see where this arrow goes on the target. I think that Robin Hood in the knock. Now, one of my viewers says that's not a Robin Hood unless it goes down the backhand, and that's his opinion. As far as I'm concerned, if it hits the knock, that's a Robin Hood. So that went really well. Like, it's kind of, for me, the reason I do these, it's a shock feeling, because if you're new to the sport, or let's say you're buying new arrows, you don't know how they're going to shoot, and that's probably why you're watching this video. So you're saying, well, I don't want to invest $100 in some arrows if they're going to be garbage. And that's exactly what I thought when I brought these arrows today. I wasn't given them, I paid for them. I was like, well, I don't want to invest $100 if these arrows are absolute garbage. And I went, well, the only way for me to test them if they're garbage is to shoot them. So let's see how they go. Now, I had some archers in my store this morning, and they were wanting to buy some better arrows, as far as like arrows for indoor, to try and help their score. Now, my advice to them was shoot better, shoot more and shoot better. Like, arrows may give you some points. There's no question arrows will give you some, especially if they're the wrong arrows or they're not good arrows. So, you know, there's some points there about, well, maybe I do need to change arrows, especially for recurve shooters. But if the arrows shoot good, I don't know if you're going to get many points for spending more. Now once again, if you're an elite shooter, go out and buy whatever arrow you want, or if you're giving them, heck, all the luck for you. But my advice to them, I was like, what score do you shoot for indoor? I'm going to get the number wrong. I think he said 575. Sounds about right. And I said, well, you should be able to do that with skinny arrows. In fact, you should be able to do better than that with skinny arrows. So work on just your skinny arrows and work on making better shots rather than trying to buy some points with fatter arrows. Work on consistency, work on making better shots, work on your shot technique. Whoa. People say, why don't you shoot a different target, Stephen? Well, these arrows are really cheap and I like the group. I like the feeling of a group. I like the feeling of the arrows whacking against each other, and I test for durability in the arrows by them crashing against each other. Like I said, I've been shooting the Victories for 2 years. I haven't really busted any. Now, if I was to shoot the big fat arrows, indoor arrows, and I was to shoot them together, I would crack them. So I cannot shoot two fat arrows in the same target for indoor, but I can shoot multiple ones of these. Look, they feel great. I did a video once on comparing cheap arrows to expensive arrows, and I got a whole heap of views. Now these arrows are cheap, but these arrows are good. They are good. And the pin nocks, the decent points, look, you can tell this is a decent quality carbon. Some carbon on the market is high in resin. This looks to me to be high in carbon. So what I mean by that is if you look at a cheap carbon arrow, I'm not going to name any names, but it starts with P, that's not PSE, they are very shiny. They're a shiny arrow and they're filled with lots of resin, and basically they're prone to breakage. So if you miss the target, they're more likely to break. Now these arrows are cheaper than those and they look just so much better. They're obviously thinner, half the width, and like they've got superior components. Now just let's look at this arrow as far as value on the market. It comes with pins. Pins are worth what, 20 bucks a dozen? Comes with pin nocks. You may have to replace the pin nocks, so you know that's maybe a good or bad thing. The points, what are the points worth? Let's say 20 bucks a dozen. If they're gold tip, they're $50 a dozen. And you're buying this whole arrow made for under $100. Great value. Let's fire one more and then we'll go down and check out the group. So which arrows should you buy for target shooting if you're a target archer? Now Skylon produced a whole range of arrows. Should you buy the Brixton, which is the .001 version of this? Look, it depends how much money you got to spend. They sell those for under $100 just for the bare shafts with the pins, which is great value, .001 with pins. So let's compare it to the carbon ones, which are $150 a dozen without pins. Pins are $20. Now if you compare it to the Victory VIPs, they're $140 a dozen. So, but the VIPs are spine aligned. So that's the question you go. So to me, the Victory's a big brand. It's now been well received. People rave about it. This is a new brand. I love that sound where the arrows are going in there. So let's go up there and check where those arrows are landing, because I can't see. I can just hear. I can see a big black dot in the center. Okay, so I'm up here at target. You can see the group is really tight. So I've got 1, 2, definitely 2 nocks shot off. So there's one. See, there's the pin just there. Look, you couldn't get any better Robin Hood than that. Actually, so this one pin's also shot off. That's the Victory pin shot off. The Victory pins are pretty good, but no, I've done more than that. So here's another one. There's another knock blowing off, just there. And that's it. So 3 knocks wrecked in 2. I don't know how many arrows I fired. So it's clear to me now from this group. Now it could be the arrows getting deflected off from the center because the group is there, but it's clear to me that probably the Victory arrows probably group better than the Skylon Radius, just from this. But what's clearer to me is these arrows are more than suitable for a beginner archer, and I think they're more than suitable for an advanced archer. So for someone who's a recurve archer or a compound archer, who's on a tight budget, who's wanting to compete, and they don't have much money, these arrows are a perfect option to get you into the sport and see how well you shoot. And then if you want to try and buy a couple of extra points to push you up that ladder a little bit, that's where you go with a better grade arrow than these. So I'm going to say the other person who's going to buy these arrows is a person who wants a whole bunch of arrows in their quiver just for practice, so they can sit there and shoot lots of arrows at the target and not walk backwards and forwards. So, but to me, I love the points. This is a bulge point. Now Skylon actually have 2 points in their range. They have a parallel point and a bulge point, and they have different weights. They obviously also have pins, but the prices are fantastic on these shafts, and to me they look great. I mean, let's just go like that. One of those is a Skylon. Sorry, two of those are Skylon and one's a Victory. I can't tell the difference from the outside of the shaft. The Skylon have got more variance in the height, I think, but what I'm going to do next for the next video is I'm going to see what score I shoot indoor with the Skylon Radius Arrows. Now my scores indoor will vary, at the moment are varying between, out of 300 are varying around the 297, is kind of where I'm averaging. 298 would be a good day, 295 probably a poor day. So let's see what score I shoot with these in the next video. Thanks for watching, bye.